Perfect. Perfect. Thanks, Candace. And thank you everyone for joining. As Candace mentioned, today we're going to be covering our perspective on the top AI infrastructure trends to be on the lookout for in 2025. And really, it's a super interesting time to get into this subject. But before we get started, let me go through a few housekeeping slides from our side. As Candace mentioned, this session is recorded, and we'll send a copy of the recording over to you after the session. And then, if you are interested in learning more about Redpanda, don't jump to any of these links right now. I'm actually going to put these links in the chat. But after the event, feel free to take a look at a few of these links. We have several different ways to learn more about Redpanda, whether that be hands-on practical experience with our university website or our docs page, or one-to-one engagement over Slack, or via our blog. There's tons of different ways to learn more about Redpanda and also get practical experience. So we offer serverless, so you can get started with Redpanda in literally seconds. So handful of different ways to engage and learn more, and we'd love to engage with you. So with that, I would love to introduce our speakers from Redpanda today. So today we have Dennis and Tyler from our side. Dennis, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, glad that you're all joining. So I'm Dennis Cody. I'm one of the product managers here at Redpanda. I lead a lot of our AI security and observability initiatives here. I'm excited. I have about a 15-year career in big data and AI, and really excited to be speaking and nerding out with my colleague Tyler here.
Welcome, Tyler.
Hey, I'm Tyler Rockwood. I'm a engineer here at Red Panda. I work on sort of everything, but been focusing a lot on our AI story. And I'll have a demo here later to show you some of the stuff that we've built and the ways that you can plug in some of these really cool Gen AI technology into data pipelines as well. But yeah, oh, and this is in the picture here. This is my dog Luna. She's fantastic, but big dog people over here. So, anyways.
Oh, perfect. All right. Well, with that, we'll get into the discussion, starting with trend one.
All right, so just kind of lay out here. Honestly, people don't want to die by death by PowerPoint, so it's really going to be me and Tyler nerding out about some of this stuff. The first trend really that has been a long time coming is AI is finally going mainstream, and how can we actually unlock value from 80% of the world's data, which is unstructured. So if you kind of look like back in 2010, uh, big data was the craze. Everyone's like, this is going to solve all of our problems. There's load everything. We'll figure it out later. So we did that. Now we have, petabytes, exabytes of data that we still can't do anything with. So, that kind of stinks. But AI tools, especially these LLMs and all of these sort of, new transformer models, they're finally kind of giving us an opportunity to you know, uh, analyze and take context and enrich and structure and summarize and do all these cool words on this unstructured data, right? Your emails, your web pages, your all this stuff. Um, it seems like now we can finally extract information and value out of that 80%. Finally, it's valuable. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's funny because I think a lot of people, when they hear about this Gen AI technology these days and like right now, like there's a lot of focus on these chatbots, right? And like everyone's thinking about integrating building like chatbots into their products and things like that. But I think there's a lot more like rich use cases you can do with these things with this technology than just building these chatbots. And yeah, like what you're hinting at of like you have all this unstructured data in your enterprise, in your business, and like it's just sitting there doing nothing, and they could provide so much value. So I think being able to use these LLMs to either extract some data out of it or do some analysis or look at trends or whatever it may be, like really providing value there, I think is really cool. So one thing that a lot of people talk about with these LLMs is like, oh, well, they're non-deterministic. Like I don't get any like guarantees. It's not like I can write an algorithm, some tests in and out, and like I know exactly for these inputs, look at these outputs. Like it's a little bit of a black box in terms of I just throw some text in there and I'll get some text out, right? And you like people are talking about like, oh, you're building on these unreliable primitives and things like that. And I think you got to shift your mindset a little bit because you're like the stuff that is like bread and butter, really easy. Like I build a system that gets these inputs and gives outputs. Like don't use an LLM there, right? Like use an LLM for the stuff that use like you look at this problem and you go, this is so hard. I have no idea how to build an algorithm to do this. That's where these LLMs can give you. It's not that you're taking, systems that can operate at 100% correctness and you're like making them operate at 95% correctness because you're throwing LLMs in there. Like, no, don't do that. Like, do things where you have 0% value you're gaining from said thing. And now you can build a system to unlock, 90% of the value using these LLMs, right? So like that's where we see more of these like big data trends and stuff like where that data collected there is actually useful. And like yeah, you can build a chatbot, you can maybe do some RAG over some of that unstructured data to like be able to give some context to people asking questions, but there's more use cases there than just that. And that's where this sort of like idea of taking that unstructured data and locking the value out of it, whether that's like you want to be able to take all this unstructured data, put it into just a structured form. Like there's been a ton of work in the LLM community to, do things like deterministically ensure that LLMs, the tokens that are generated are valid to JSON or a very specific
Mm.
JSON schema even, right? So that you can ensure that as you're built, you can build these pipelines to like, let's say you're like get PDFs from like some vendor on some stuff and you want to like slurp that up so you have like real reports you can like query in whatever your data lake is, right? You can actually like use LLMs to like, grab the text out of that and like get structured stuff out of that. So you can actually like leverage some of this in ways that are providing new value on top of data that you already have that's just sitting there and doing nothing for you.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So both as a data engineer. So I spent a lot of my career as a data engineer. I did some of my career as a data scientist, and model maker. But it's kind of funny. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's always data engineering. Like 95% of data science is data engineering and just trying to get it to like not blow up when you're ingesting from a CSV or a database. Every freaking time. It's like, I want to do the fun stuff. It's like, no, you gotta do 95% of the job that you don't like. Um, and so a lot of it is just bit mangling, right? Like, okay, it's in this format from this database. I got to get it out. I got to mangle it together, or I'm reading from like S3 buckets. Okay, now I have file types of all different types. Maybe it's all plain text. Whoa, I'm sitting pretty. It's already all sort of plain text and not binary. Um, you still have to like standardize it. Like these models want a standardized input, or downstream systems want standardized inputs, right? Like a lot of this with AI is it's valuable today, not for maybe the sexy like you said the chatbots or the future leaning topics, but just like I don't want to do more bit mangling. I just want my data clean so I can then do the fun part of my job. AI. I want to do the fun stuff. I don't want to give the fun stuff to AI. Um, it's pretty cool. I use it a lot. I've used it a lot for um when maybe I care more about me being lazy than costs. It's a great sort of universal tool, just to kind of prototype, get something up and running fast. So that way, like I can validate things. I'm not wasting, a whole week doing something just to be heartbroken when it doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, it's funny you mentioned like automating boring stuff and things like that. I used to work on an email client. It's called Shortwave, but they like this idea of like in email, there's all these horrible heuristics built up around like, oh, we like expect this certain like reply to header in this format, and we can like hide previous messages and like all that junk you can sort of like instead of building these awful heuristics that work and then some people get, if they don't get emails in that format like get horrendous experiences or you can build all these great and emails just at the end of the day plain text being sent back and forth in this like ancient 50-year-old format, right? So being able to like take emails and like do processing on them or like oh I don't have to figure out search syntax anymore, I can just like create a filter based on like have some LLM like filter my email for me or whatever, right? Like stuff like that is like really great use cases for taking like having this unstructured data that's really painful. Nobody wants to deal with it, right? Like nobody loves
Yeah.
to. Most people, I've never met anybody that loves to like go through their email particularly well. So like just stuff like that, really I see stuff like that. It's just really, really, I think good use cases of stuff you can do. That's just, like I said, more than this chatbot experience. I mean, that's like a baseline. Like you can do that super easy
Yeah.
and throw that up on your website, right? But and those are powerful experiences, right? Like we have this in Redpanda, we have our docs page has this like Ask AI
Oh
bot,
yeah, yeah.
and it's awesome. Like I don't have to trawl through our docs and like find the right page. I can just like answer a question and start this conversation, and it will search the docs for me. So there's some cool experiences you can do there, for sure. But yeah. Anyways, I was just like,
My attention span has gone just to zero because of this AI stuff. Like I used to remember spending hours looking at documentation and, online for code examples. Now I'm like, okay, the AI, either you're going to be able to do it or I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to do it because I'm like, now I got to go back to remember how to do this stuff. And it's so much work. Just do it for me.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I think like in software development even there's a lot of good use cases of like generating code and being able to look up code and like just the
Yeah.
changes that people can do there. I think like just before this, I was searching like how to do some specific join, and I was like, how like I just like ask one of these like AI bots, right? And they can generate actually like really good SQL pretty easily, and I don't have to remember like, oh yeah, how does when does the having clause apply versus like the join, oh that's after my join, or like after my aggregations, all those sorts of things like um
Text to
yeah
SQL, that's a great example of like unstructured to structured. Like,
yeah
this is what I'm interested in. This is kind of like what I'm trying to get back. What would my query look like? Like, that's a great example that's kind of spreading like wildfire in like every product now.
oh yeah for sure. And I've seen some use cases of like I think probably more in like the data warehouses, but even in like other software as a service products where people have like you have all this like internal analytics, metrics, data, or whatever, right? And you don't have like a good way to expose that to users, but you can, give the LLM some ability to, sort of like generate queries that you run on behalf of users and stuff like that. I guess that gets a little bit more into later trends as well, but yeah, there's just a lot of like really cool stuff. And yeah, generating SQL or generating code even.
Eh,
Yeah, I had to like port some like really old nasty Java code to Go recently, like a few months ago, and I remember being like, okay, how do I like take this horrible like encryption AES stuff and convert it into Go? And it was yeah, a lot faster than me like how I would have done it, had to do it before, which is like, okay, like, do I need a library for this? Can I use a standard library? Go trawl through libraries and docs and then find the right thing. It's just generated in a few
yeah.
seconds. It was awesome.
No, it's kind of funny. Like another, I think, example of the sort of unstructured structured is, um, so, you know, anybody in a software company like Jira, you live by Jira, you die by Jira. There's a billion things open. Good luck trying to keep track of everything. And like, one of my big parts of my job is trying to understand the trends and really sort of like what are the very important things that's going to impact a wide, swath of people, or, something that's very impactful to a sub-select group of people. Really hard when you have like thousands of issues and feature requests and everything open, right? So I actually use AI myself to sort of trawl through these feature requests. They're plain text, they're very um, complex asks, very, context sensitive. Um, I'll use an LLM to trawl through this stuff and start doing things like classification. Be like, hey, pull out tags, right? So maybe I need to figure out of these, thousands of requests, what are something that fall under my purview versus maybe one of my colleagues. And so I can classify things very easy. I can simplify it. I can start doing things like embeddings to start, figuring out what are similar asks, right? And doing a lot of sort of the manual, just organizing of this information. So, I get back JSON records, that I can like, turn into a database table or something. And now I have SQL foo at my availability. Um, but it's just much nicer than just manually going through all this stuff. And then I have to remember or I have to write down somewhere. It's like that's miserable. I don't want to do
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
For me, that doesn't scale. I like my attention,
No.
like, yeah, my attention span and memory is so finite. But yeah, I think a great use case is sort of this like clustering and building in depth. Like, I think a lot of people think of like similarity search when they think of embeddings, but like this other side of using embeddings to do clustering is really cool, right? Like you have all these vectors in your vector space, and you can sort of like cluster them, using more traditional like statistical means and stuff to figure out where all your like similar groupings are, right? Is like a really cool use case and can be good for sort of like as you're doing more like batch oriented analysis. That actually brings me, I want to show a quick demo if you're cool with this demo, with
Oof, you
Dennis.
are tempting the demo gods doing this
I know,
on
I
the
know. I'm doing
fly.
it live. I'm doing it live, but it's all right. It'll be okay. If not, then everyone can have a good laugh and we can continue on to our next trend. Cool. I'm going to share my screen. So this is so when I talk about what you're able to do with Redpanda and you talk about having these JSON records flowing through and then being able to like put them in a database somewhere, that is exactly what this quick little demo is. So I have two servers running locally. I have a Redpanda broker running locally, and then I have a Postgres with PG Vector installed running locally as well. And this is a really simple pipeline in Redpanda Connect. Redpanda Connect's our connectivity tool that allows you to connect lots of different services together and do normal sorts of like stream processing stuff. You can do this in batch as well, like going from S3 bucket to S3 bucket as well. But this is a quick pipeline that, like I said, reads from a topic in Redpanda. There's some JSON like articles in there, and then it's going to run them through nomic embed text to compute some embeddings, and then write that out to Postgres, which then you could do some queries to do this clustering or do similarity search and stuff like that using PG Vector, which is pretty cool. So here's my config file. Like I said, all we're doing is enriching these JSON documents that flow through this pipeline with some embeddings, and then we're just writing that out to Postgres. Sort of on startup, I'll create the table and do some fun stuff like that. Let me make sure everything's running. It looks like everything's running. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off my pipeline, and it's going to start. And once I show the first, one of the cool things about Redpanda Connect and some of the processors we have is they don't just reach to like cloud services. You can also own your data in your pipelines and have full control over where your data goes and run models locally on local GPUs. So this machine I have here has a couple of NVIDIA GPUs. And right now, nothing's running on it. But once I send some data through this pipeline, I have a couple of just like fake articles I'm going to write through here. I think I actually have to update my ID, so otherwise I'm getting duplicate keys. You can see here that now I'm actually running using Olama locally. This embedding model is spun up on this local GPU, and I'm actually computing these embeddings all completely locally. Nothing's leaving my network, right? Everything's staying on the local Redpanda broker, going to my local GPU, and then being written to Postgres. And now I can, look in Postgres, and it looks like I need to. There's some stuff in there. I think I need to set extended play and no wrap, I think is the. Yeah, now you can see there's the embeddings there, and then as well as the ID and the title and the body. So it's just a quick demo of some of the cool stuff you can do with Redpanda and how you can build these like production ready pipelines in just a few lines of YAML. So, all right. I did have some, I'm going to stop sharing here. I did have some quick stuff, but we were with the duplicate key stuff, a little bit of errors, but not too bumpy of a demo.
No, man, I'm impressed. That's I'm jealous. Usually for me, it's like, how did I wipe my hard disk? I didn't even power it on yet. So yeah, I'm always terrified doing live demos. Kudos. Um, yeah, so
Of
actually you
course.
bring up a good point about so we at Red Panda have something called Sovereign AI, which is sort of our flag in the ground of where we think a lot of the AI market's going to be going, especially in the enterprise space, more so is you know, people need to have sovereignty, not only just their data, but also over their AI infrastructure, right? It's like, you know, we're putting it more and more into the heart of our businesses and our operations. Like, do you really want to offshore, essentially offshore your core fundamental business capabilities to a third party? Maybe you're okay with it. Maybe, it's something you're gonna fix later, but like more established businesses, like they're not gonna, take their trade secrets and go, oh, I'm gonna let somebody else do it for me. That's terrifying. So that's really cool. You can kind of, in a simple YAML file, be able to kind of start doing all that stuff locally. It just makes it easier to get started, right? You don't have to go through legal and permissions and all that other stuff that I'm sure a lot
Yeah,
of people
exactly.
listening in are having to do with their AI tools.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's really cool to be able to do that quickly. I think I think talking about embeddings and sovereignty, I think sort of the next, as we'll jump in, I think we can transition into our second trend here,
Yeah.
of sort of, I think once you up level, like just being able to do this unstructured text analysis, the sort of next frontier is being able to work on multiple modalities of inputs, right? So this is being able to look at images, being able to look at videos, audio, in addition to just text, right? And I think this is sort of like a big capability that was brought to light, and there's a lot of effort on this last year, 2024. I would say there's a lot of new multimodal capabilities that were coming out in these models, and that was sort of like the focus for a lot of these LLM providers and researchers. And I'm excited to see. I think we're still early days there, but there's a lot of like really cool use cases and things coming through that I'm like, yeah, I think there's just so like it just all these technologies keep building on themselves, and all these new breakthroughs do. One of the cool things that I've seen from these multimodal abilities is giving these models the ability to not just read text, but also see the world and hear things as well. Is There's this my brother-in-law runs this startup for um, like moving companies, and they generate leads for moving companies. And basically you can go on their website, take a few pictures of like your house and say like I want to move somewhere, and then they can do a rough like analysis based on just a couple of pictures that you take in your house of like how they can estimate how big the house is, how heavy all these items are, how many movers, how big a truck you'll need, and then they can give you an estimate based on like, these are the things that based on the pictures that were analyzed. And they do all of this with LLMs. It's kind of like amazing, like the stuff you can do with these. And
That's
then
cool.
they can send those out to, moving companies as leads, and also give the consumer like the ability to pick from a couple different moving companies and stuff, and give them like more accurate quotes than you can by just like, because when you fill out those forms online, I don't know how, if you've ever filled out one of these moving forms online, you're like, I don't know how much stuff I have or how big a truck I need. Like, oh, you always think you have less stuff until you start unpacking things, and you're like, oh goodness, I have way more
Uh,
stuff I need to
I,
purge.
I've put, yeah, I've made a huge mistake.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Anyways, like back to multimodal, like there's so many cool things. Everything from like embeddings and being able to, create embeddings and do similarity search and clustering over images, and also like analyzing stuff like PDFs and all these like data formats that you can't normally process, even if you're like, oh, I can use a regex, I don't need an LLM, like good luck. But um I think, when you start looking at images and PDFs and stuff, like those are things that are even harder you can't do, right? So that's when you need these multimodal abilities. So it's pretty cool.
No, 100%. Yeah, I mean it's funny in that you know, you mentioned things like images. I think what a lot of folks here might have used, right, are tools to do like invoicing or like, reimbursements, right? You put in your receipts and at least how it used to be is use these terrible tools that you put in the receipt and then it's like cool, 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 thanks. Also fill out everything and
Yeah.
and and you just hate your life because you're spending like 5 hours just filling out a bunch of receipts, just for it to be like, no, you didn't do this right, do it again. Exactly. See, my MacBook agrees. Um, so that's like a great example of like an entire industry was built that like these models can support and just simplify, right? Um, an example that I actually gave recently at another talk was again, I think my sort of mantra for AI is always it should make my life easier. And always kind of lean into using AI if it makes me be able to do more with less. Um, so kind of coming back, so all right, I kind of told you I use AI to scan JIRAs and classify them. Um, I do the same thing actually with we interview a lot of customers. We have these tons of recordings. We have like 5,000 minutes of interviews, I'm sorry, 5,000 hours, sorry, of customer interviews. Like I obviously can't go on all those calls, but I do want all that data. Like people having conversations like this, really rich. There's a lot of things that you say that you would probably be too verbose. You would like put it into words. So you get a lot more information just having kind of native discussions. I want that insights, right? These are the frustrations. These are the pain points of customers, right? So, I use AI now. I was using the Whisper model, for instance. Yeah, it's not hip and cool and new, but it's incredibly powerful and actually getting better every year. Um, to extract out, do a transcript, right? And then I would take another LLM and be like, structure this, right? Because now we're coming back to it's free text. How do I structure it? And I'm able to classify it. I'm able to say, hey, derive pain points. I'm deputizing AI models now as a PM. Don't tell my boss. Um, to, be able to identify pain points and feature requests and do all this stuff that maybe they didn't or wouldn't say in an email or Jira or anything else. So, that's another way I'm trying to leverage AI to, at scale, kind of help me understand trends and patterns in customer asks.
Absolutely. That's super cool. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I think like audio is something that, you know, I think there's been some focus on, but I don't think there's like enough focus on sometimes because it's such a powerful medium. Like, so how often are you, chatting with a coworker and you're like, can we just jump on a call? Like, this is just like
I'm
so much
notorious
faster
for
to
that.
just go.
I
Yeah,
think I
yeah,
think I
just like
drive you
talk through
nuts.
it. But yeah, like I think being able to have these LLMs start to like generate audio and being able to consume audio will just really tighten the loop in terms of being able to integrate this more natively in like a friendly way for people, especially people who are maybe less technical. But yeah, I think there's a lot of like really cool stuff you can do with that. Not that I love like the call center, like I press, have to like, ask 9 times to get to a person or whatever. But as the models grow more sophisticated, maybe they can actually like just answer my question instead of being like pre-scripted to just be able to do like 3 things.
So totally off
Um,
topic, but I don't know if you've like heard some of these new models where they're adding ums and uhs and they sound creepily organic. I'm like, that's not real.
yes.
Oh.
Yeah, they're getting really, really good, really good.
Yeah,
It
the
is
text to
scary of
speech
like
ones. Yeah.
yeah, I agree. It is like scary. Even like I think the video generation stuff is so cool. Like obviously we're very early days there, but there's so much I think there that we like that will really change a lot of stuff. And it's already like it's you can't believe anything you read on the internet. You can't believe anything you see on the internet either, right? But yeah, I think like it's still early days because those are all those at least the stuff that I've seen are all super resource intensive just to generate like very small clips, and they're still incredibly clunky. Um, but it's like a very active thing people are looking into, and yeah, I remember watching some like documentary on some people who are like trying to generate, I think anime or something using LLMs to like generate video because
Oh,
you can
that's
kind of
cool.
get away in anime, I think, with a little bit more of like flicker effects and some of the like it doesn't have to be as polished as like like a real world video.
Hmm.
And they were making some breakthroughs about how to like in between scenes to like make sure you generate something that's like actually you could transition between. It's not like real jerky, right? Because if you tell the LLM to like generate the scene and then generate this next scene, like you get huge jumps or even different styles or whatever.
Yeah,
But
it's like those are like the keyframes, and I don't really know this stuff. It's like I forget what they call it, where it's like kind of fill in between and whatnot to kind of bridge the gap. Yeah, oh, that's cool.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
really cool.
yeah. There's a lot of really cool research and stuff going on in that space as well. So yeah, I mean, multimodals. Yeah, there's just so much there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So kind of moving on here. So trend number three. So this is obviously something that you know, is coming up again and again and again. We keep hearing it. And I don't know about some people here. I have many times had to go back and be like, so what does this mean again? Is agentic AI. What do we mean by agentic AI? And so to kind of simplify it, I like to say it's about machine to machine communication, right? It's to kind of go back to what you're talking about, right? It's you mentioned with the first sort of breakthrough really was the chatbot. It was machine to human and human to machine. Valuable. You know, I don't know about you. I still use it all the time. But the point eventually becomes to operate at a low latency, to operate at scale, right? To decouple um, humans from processes completely, you got to have machine to machine, right? And so, you know, this is kind of funny, right? Because if you look at our prior trends, structuring the data, doing multimodal, kind of coincides into here's how you can make machines be able to talk with not just other AIs, right? Which they could probably do today, but traditional hardware or traditional like, APIs and software products and web services, right? Um, that we already derive value from ourselves as humans, but now again, it's like, how can we get the AI to also derive value from these things? We already built them, let's use them. Um, so,
Totally.
cool stuff.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is most exciting that you've seen a lot of probably stuff
Mhm.
for is this like a computer use or like being having a LLM like drive a computer and using it yourself. Like I think Operator with that
I
OpenAI
just
just
saw some
recently released.
crazy videos about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's really cool stuff here. I think like Google and Gemini had some really cool demos at the end of last year as well, right at the end of like what you can do with this stuff, and it's pretty cool to see like you can just literally like say like go research and find me like a trip to wherever, right? And it will go like you can watch the model like browse the web, find some articles that have like recommendations and spots, and like go look for bookings there and like ask you like, hey, do you want to do these bookings and stuff like that. It's really cool. I think there's some gate like that's cool from like a consumer perspective, but I think even in like for our customer base, there's like a lot of these enterprise companies. I think there's a lot of still power for stuff in that. You think about these like really old, horrible interfaces that like nobody wants to touch. You can now just like delegate to an LLM. I know you spend a lot of time in Jira, but I'm very excited to be able to just tell an LLM like go update all my tickets now because I don't like Jira's fine, but it's just like yeah, there's
Tired of
some use
hearing from
cases like
Dennis.
that.
Say what you have to say to appease them and make them go away.
Uh, yeah, exactly, right? Like there's just like a lot of old software that's just not going to get updated, and I'm talking like old like bookkeeping software or whatever like you have to use, or like how much time do you have to spend to train people on how to use Salesforce, and like maybe you don't have to do that anymore. You can just have people tell an LLM to like go do these things in Salesforce, and it'll go like do them for you, right? Like that seems like kind of like
That's
crazy
the new
things,
Turing
but
test, is having an
yes.
LLM go use Salesforce. If it can use it properly, be like, oh my God, it's smarter than we think.
I know, right? I know. New benchmarks. Throw out all your old AGI benchmarks. This is now how you measure it. For sure. But like I think there's so many like there's a lot of cool stuff. I was actually talking to somebody about like having to like, oh, I didn't have an API for this service. You have to like go fill out this really crappy form on their website instead. It's like, oh, now you have an API for it. You just call into an LLM as like a service to go like fill out this form on the internet. And like, wow, that's kind of scary that those sorts of things you could like are possible now, right? Um, I don't know. There's a lot of like really interesting things that I'm sure there'll
You
be.
just spawned one in my head that I know terrifies a lot of people, including probably a lot in our audience, is the impact to job applications in the job market,
Oh
right?
man, yeah.
Where now everybody's getting like 10,000 applications, just because they're all AI written. Now we have AI creating job applications and AI reviewing job applications.
And now we'll have with computer use AI submitting job applications, right? So
Yeah. Oh, it's
yeah, not
great.
just
It
generating
is.
the application, but yeah, actually like going on
Oh.
and doing it. Yeah, yeah, that is. I didn't think about that, Dennis. That's very interesting, man.
Oh yeah,
So
no. So it could be used for good or for evil.
it's applying for jobs an evil thing. Okay, we won't get into that, but yeah, I think that and there's a lot of other I think really interesting use cases when I think back to like I spent a long time working on email, so it's like it's a
Yeah.
fresh thing in my mind. But being able to do like triage my inbox for me, or like as emails are coming, like sort of like AI like filters, right? Is like saying
Mhm.
this email's coming in my inbox. It's if I like basically just being able to create a filter that says if I get anything that somebody mentions my LinkedIn, and if I'm looking for new roles, just automatically put it in spam. Like being able to do stuff like that and like not have to actually like make sure they use the word LinkedIn and like craft keywords specifically, like
Yeah.
not having to do that sort of stuff and just letting an agent like manage my email for me sounds awesome. Yeah. Anyways, and there's a lot of I think also use cases in the like we look at like these different verticals like cybersecurity and then
Mm.
analyzing logs and being able to like raise flags for like, hey, this looks suspicious, and or even allowing the LLMs to like sort of like themselves do things like block accounts and whatever sort of
Oh
like
yeah.
mitigations you can do in real time as you're like you know trawling through audit logs or something. Like nobody's going to be sitting
Yeah.
there like watching audit logs, right? But maybe as these things get cheaper and cheaper, you'll be able to and using these models more and more, you'll be able to actually like look at a stream of data that's flying through at high volume and just like throw some compute resources at it and be able to actually like in real time block these sorts of threats and stuff. So it'd be really cool to see what we build and where stuff goes with this sort of new technology.
Yeah. No, I think it's pretty incredible. So, I think that like for folks, I don't know about you, but yeah, I've gotten away from the marketing hype. Actually, I'm always very sort of careful in AI. Like, you and I have done this a long time, and it's just kind of funny where I don't know about you. I've gone on like LinkedIn and stuff, and people chat as experts, and I'm like, do I know AI? Maybe I don't. Maybe it's like did a quick take shift to the right, and like I'm still over here, and it's like maybe the whole field's moved, and I'm just like an oblivious fool now. Um, no, so you gotta just be really kind of like careful. I feel like nowadays with these words, it's a slowly evolving field. I mean, it's moving very fast, but like the underlying technology and sort of its applications is still pretty slow. And I feel like we're not lagging behind as much as a lot of people posting want us to feel. At least I've come to realize that. So um,
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I talk to people, in the AI space from at other companies or at meetups or
yeah,
whatever, they're always like use cases. Give me use cases. Like people are
yes,
hungry, like how can we integrate this into stuff, right?
yes,
And I think we're still figuring out what that looks like. Like I said at the very beginning, like it's more than just these chatbots, like there's another level of sophistication and things that we can do here by tapping into that unstructured data that you have very little, you're not deriving any value for now, right? Because like, what we said at the beginning, like these things can be a little unreliable. They're not the same as like, normal systems built with high guarantees of correctness, right? There's going to be some normal sort of like issues there, and being able to come to terms with that's okay because if I didn't have this technology, I wouldn't be able to do anything with it. Is yeah, really really important. So yeah, I don't know if there's any questions in the audience or if we have any
yeah. I was
questions we
gonna
can
say
work through. I
like,
know we're getting about to
Sure.
time.
We do. And if anyone in the audience
sweet.
had questions, then they feel free to drop those into the Q&A. But yeah, let me get started with a few we've got. And so I'm surprised you guys didn't bring this up during the session, but someone asked, what is your guys' take on the DeepSeek R1 announcement?
Mhm. Dennis, why don't you go first?
Um, yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, obviously, I think it's funny in that Tyler and I were actually talking about this last week, and it's kind of funny in that I see a lot of it in the news today. So I think it's gone mainstream today. So it's probably really fresh today. Uh, you know, it's an impact. I mean, you can measure it in several different ways. Nvidia lost to Stargate, as people are calling it. They took a $500 billion hit to their valuation. The AI market, I think, is really sort of in a frenzy over this. The paper itself is pretty innovative. Let's get, even kind of putting aside the fact of how cost effective they train these models. Um, they created a very sort of innovative new way to do training outside of just typical supervised fine tuning that is shown to be far more cost effective. That I think, honestly, that combined with its MIT license, proper open source, is going to really spur, I think, sort of the next iteration of innovation. This has a lot of the same feel to me as the leaked llama weights did that sort of kicked off up to this point. Um, so, I'm pretty excited. I think the next month or two, we're going to start seeing some really crazy um, innovations as the hackers around the world kind of get their hands on it.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. I think a lot of these like we talk a lot about like sovereign AI and being able to run these things like in your VPC so you don't have to, call out, and just it just shows the power of I think open source. And like Zuckerberg said, like the future of these models is going to be not in the proprietary ones but these open source models, and I think that's proving out true through DeepSeek, and it is going to encourage innovation and push the industry to go, be better about it. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. I ran it a little bit locally, and the 7 billion one is it's fine, but
Okay.
the 70 billion one is like really good. It's like really quite amazing. So it's really cool to be able to like, yeah, normally you have to go shell out a bunch of money to one of these LLM providers to go and use, these really advanced new reasoning models that can kind of like work through and chew through problems, and you spend a little bit more of this compute time to think, so to speak, through whatever problems and things you're throwing at it. So being able to use those locally, and the fact that you could that it's all open. I know there was just a big project announced yesterday, maybe it was really recently. At
Yeah, I
least I
think
read
so.
about it on Hacker News about like trying to reproduce R1. So I know there's an effort going through to like be able to reproduce this, because I know there's a lot of questions people like, how could they have done that with the, 500 GPUs or whatever. So anyways, I like I think it'll go through its diligence, and we'll find out if that's true or not. But I'm still excited about sort of the future of what that unlocks here. And there's still going to be the question of like throwing more and better data at it is still going to make these models better. So I think I'm at least I'm optimistic that there's a little bit of an overreaction in the market right now. But one of the really cool things actually from the paper is this like idea of synthetic data generation, and how much I remember, early days in the LLMs, they're like, oh, they've already trained these LLMs on the whole internet. Like they can't get any better now because like you don't have any more data. And it's like, no, actually, like much to like how you work on fake problems in as like a school, like I'm teaching my son's learning math. He's like doing these
Oh, that's a
fake
great example.
problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like doing these fake like, you have two apples and four apples. Like, no, you don't actually have any apples, but you're still like learning to do addition that way. It's the same way we're teaching these models to like reason and think through stuff, is you find made up problems and you make it work through all these different paths, and then you can drop the ones that are dead ends and just the good ones, and then train it on those good examples, right? So this idea of like synthetic data generation, I think is just um, I think that's how all we're still getting all these innovations after we've already trained on the entire internet, right? And it's again, it's like a base principle of AI. Like it's all the data. Like the data is the most important part of it. Like obviously, these algorithms are making incredible improvements on compute, but like you need good data to get a good model. And being able to spend this compute and have these models generate this really good input for your models to train on is you get this like, yeah, you have models to train the next models, and they just keep getting better and better, as we are able to synthetically generate more and more data, which is one of the big things about Llama 3.2 or 3.3, I think. One of the latest series of Llama models, one of the really big things that was sort of like under the radar, I think, for most people, and like that that just like maybe read the news on this stuff, is that you can now, the initial Llama release, you could not generate synthetic data for training using those models, but the latest Llama ones you can. So there's been actually a few really cool open source projects, and there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do to like actually do some real training of these models yourself. Yeah, with like this sort of like generating the data yourself, and you can make it as good quality using these really big models. It also helps with like this distillation process into like smaller models as well. So how you can get these small models that are still really powerful.
Perfect.
It's exciting. I'm just glad that we're trying new things. I mean, Transformer Vanilla was, 2017. So it's like, we know this isn't the end game. We got to kind of mix it up a little bit. So I'm always excited to people try just new things and see these breakthroughs.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Oh, we got time for one more question here. Someone asked, how are you guys using AI at Redpanda?
So, I mean, I've given a couple examples throughout presentation. I mean, essentially, a lot of my job is just trying to understand trends and customer asks. And so whether it's using speech to text models like Whisper, or text to text, transformers, like your traditional GPT type models. Um, I use a lot of them for classification and just sort of trend analysis and boil stuff down. I also, so cool trick for people, you can use it for creating better prompts. So something I made another video on is I've used them for how to create better prompts. And something we're starting to do at Redpanda, which I think is cool, is starting to curate good prompts that we can share across the company and kind of reuse. So, it's kind of like your typical software libraries and frameworks, you reuse and work together. Same thing. So it's kind of cool. We're starting to figure out how to use these models to just answer questions on, we're very data-driven people. So
Yeah. I think for me as an engineer, one of the things that I've been really excited about doing is automating sort of like some of the boring parts of my job. So an example of this is we have I write a lot of C++ and we're moving from using a very specific type of way to like debug your objects and print them to using a new more modern library called libformat. And there's a breaking change in there that we have to upgrade and do this migration from this one specific way to print stuff to another specific way to print stuff. It's a really mungy job. Like we already mostly have everything printed out. You just got to sort of like change how that's invoked and used. And it's fine to do the migration. Like I can manually do those all day. The problem is there's like 10,000 of these like print operators in our code base, and I
cool.
don't want to spend a year going through this. Actually, another company that I know, somebody who works in C++, spent a whole year like doing these migrations of like chipping through these operators one at a time over the course of a year. And I'm excited for the ability to use like an AI agent locally to be able to just say like, here's the refactoring I want you to go do it, and here's how you compile and print things. Like to be able to do stuff like that, to be able to actually like automate that boring part of like doing this really manual, awful code migration. So that's something I'm really excited for that you wouldn't be able to do with like AST analysis or like traditional code static analysis tools. So, anyways, something I'm excited about.
Yeah, cool. So I was actually just looking at the questions too. So somebody is really like looking far ahead into the future here. Um, so they're saying like the real AI is going to come in 2050. What's going to be the fundamental difference between, what we know or do today? So like, oof, this is a challenging question. Are you ready to make some
Yeah,
Nostradamus type of predictions?
I'm not going to make any predictions. I think the difference there's like, we have what we have today, and you can go interact with those, use those, sign up for a service and use them. And then I think there's two like levels after that that you can do. There's like we talk about AGI and then there's ASI, right? Like those are the two levels of things, artificial like general intelligence and then sentient intelligence, which I think like general intelligence is be able to reason at the level of a human. And I think there are still gaps. Like these models, they have a ton of knowledge baked into them just because of the data source they're trained on. So they seem super smart, but there are some like really basic reasoning things that they're still working through this. And if you go re-listen to the benchmarks and or these people who are building these benchmarks for AGI, like there's very simple pattern detection and stuff like that that people are able to do very easily. Like even like children and young children are able to like detect these patterns really easily. But these AI models are really bad at. And some of this is because it's multimodal, right? And there's these different modalities that they're still like text is much farther ahead than these other modalities. So like bringing those up to speed and then being able to do some of these like really basic things that's on the level of a human. And then I think when you talk about ASI, that's like the sort of like Skynet, Terminator, whatever you want to throw in there of like a sentient like is able to like think and reason more than like at the level of a human, but like is actually like its own. I don't know how you want to get in there, but like yeah, it's
Yeah.
sort of like alive, so to speak, or reason for itself, right? Like it's its own entity compared to yeah. So those are like the levels I think that you can talk through. When those happen, if those even happen, I don't know. I'm not gonna try to guess. There's lots of people out there who will um, tell you if you want to go research them. But I think just knowing what those different stages and milestones are is helpful.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think, even if you went back 5 years, would we be here today, throwing $500 billion at an AI initiative. I think most people would say you're crazy. Um, I think the general consensus is that AGI is feasible. Nobody I think really knows exactly how to get there, but it feels like we could eventually get there. ASI, to your point, is by definition something like smarter than humans, so we can't imagine it. If it happens, may not, would be a surprise to us. Like, oh, that happened. All right. So I think like AGI, and you can look at a lot of, the leading sort of AI model companies. I think they're probably thinking, the next, I've seen 5, 10 years, if unless it's like a totally fundamentally different problem. Um, so, it's an exciting time. But it's to a lot of people here, I think the real innovation's not going to be that. It's going to be how can we get better infrastructure and tooling around this stuff to make it more applicable? I think it's like any software, right? Software comes out, hardware becomes cheaper, becomes more accessible, better tooling makes it more accessible, more people can use it, and getting it into more hands and augmenting what people can do is going to be the real value to society, over the short term or even, when you talk about 2050. So.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. First off, thank you so much, Dennis and Tyler. That was a really awesome session, and I think that I certainly got a lot of that. I'm sure the audience did too. And thank you everyone today for joining. Um, as I mentioned in the beginning of the session, there's tons of different ways to learn more about Redpanda and learn more about the subject of AI. So, please check out some of these resources. I'll drop this again in the chat. Check out some of these resources to kind of take the next step and learn more. And with that, I will hand it back over to Candace.
Thank you so much, Dennis, Tyler, and Boone, for your time today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. As a reminder, this recording will be on the Linux Foundation's YouTube page later today. We hope you join us for future webinars. Have a wonderful day.